Hello and welcome to our virtual Lunch and Learn today. We'll be talking about drives replacement with the Connected Enterprise. My name is Rachel Green and I'm the Digital Communication Specialist here at McNaughton-McKay Electric Company. And presenting for us today will be Kelly Etris, Power and Motion Solutions Consultant out of our LaGrange, Georgia location. Out in the comment section, ready to answer your questions, is Bruce Cardula, Product Manager out of our Norcross, Georgia location. We'll also have a Q&A portion at the end for Kelly to answer your questions in more depth. We'll be getting started shortly, but we'd like to allow a few minutes for attendees to join us. As you come in, let us know where you're tuning in from in the comment section. You can view recordings of previous virtual Lunch and Learns on our YouTube channel under the Lunch and Learn playlist. And we cover a new topic every Wednesday at noon, so be sure to join us in the future. For anyone just coming in, welcome to our virtual Lunch and Learn today, Drives Replacement with Connected Enterprise. Let us know where you're joining us from today in the comment section. We'll be looking for your questions as you have them while our presenter, Kelly, demonstrates how using PowerFlex, Logix 5000, and Stratix products together can minimize downtime during a drive change or failure. Our specialist, Bruce Cardula, is ready to respond to your questions in the comment section as we go along. We'll also have a Q&A segment at the end of Kelly's presentation. Hi, David. Thanks for joining us today. All right, if you have any questions afterward or if you have further questions for Kelly, you can always reach out to us at the Mac and Mac Live at macandmac.com email address there on the screen. We'll have that email address for you at the end of the presentation as well. And it looks like we have a number of attendees with us now, Kelly, so let's get started.
Okay, thanks, Rachel, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We're going to be talking, like Rachel said, drives replacement with the Connected Enterprise. And so what does that mean? So Rockwell Automation has been able to control our PowerFlex drives over Ethernet IP for many, many years. With the introduction of the PowerFlex 750 series and 520 series, we've taken advantage of automatic device configuration. And so the replacement for an automatic replacement and configuring and commissioning and getting back up and running during, excuse me, a drive replacement is three different features, and these features have been around a long time. But taking advantage of them all three at the same time during this is, can help save downtime and allow you to get your machine, your plant back up and running. Because what happens when a drive failure happens is once you put the new drive in, then we have to get an IP address in it. We have to possibly flash the firmware up or down to match what's in Logix 5000. And then we've got to get the parameters set into the drive. For start source, speed reference, and those type things, motor data. So I'm going to demonstrate today. I've got a few PowerPoints slides, and I'm going to go through those, and then I'm going to transition to this demo behind me and demonstrate it also. And then we're going to go through how to set these three features up, and hopefully everything works. So we'll get started here. So we've got a drive running, we've got a compact Logix with the Stratix switch, partner with Cisco, and we've got three 750 series drives there. So at 2 a.m., our drive fails, we let the smoke out, and we remove the old drive, install the new drive, and we've wired in the input voltage wires and the motor leads. We've connected the Ethernet cable and any I/O or feedback for the motor we've wired. So as soon as we apply power back to the system, the Stratix switch is going to take advantage of a feature called DHCP persistence. So that dynamically sends down the IP address based on that port configuration to the drive. Our drive comes out of the box. Most Ethernet devices comes out of the box set up for boot P or DHCP. DHCP means Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. So that IP address has been sent down to the drive. So the drive is communicating with the controller now. And, in Logix, in the add-on profile or the module definition, there's a firmware setting, and we can disable keying. We can do compatible keying, which has to be the major revision. And then we can do exact match. So to take advantage of the firmware supervisor, instead of having to manually get out a laptop and flash to firmware, we've enabled this function, automatic firmware update, in the controller. So this is the second thing that's happening. No computer is out. This automatically being done. The firmware has been stored previously on the memory card, SD card in the controller. So the firmware flashing, of course, can take several minutes depending on the size device that's out there, the memory allocation, and what peripherals may be attached to that drive. So now once the firmware is flashed, we have to get the parameters set. So typically, if we were doing this manually, we would be doing a HIM copycat from a door-mounted HIM or the drive-mounted HIM, or we may be getting the laptop out and connecting to the drive via Drive Executive or Connecting Components Workbench, or we're logging in, going online with the processor and manually downloading it. With ADC, Automatic Device Configuration, those parameters are already stored in the Studio 5000 or Logix 5000 program. So just by checking a box and setting this up previously, the third step is to send down the configuration. So now that we're up and running, we have saved all of that time and money by it automatically doing these things. So let's see here. So here in this slide is talking about the Stratix managed switches. So Rockwell Automation partnered with Cisco several years ago to provide managed switches out there. And the 5700 that I'm using today, it has an SD card in the switch where you can store the configuration of the switch, the operating system, so you can easily transfer that configuration in the switch. We can also store the configuration. We can put the Stratix switch into the I/O configuration tree in Logix, so it can be stored and restored in Studio 5000. So once again, the feature that we're taking advantage of in the managed switch, and it has to be a managed switch, either our Stratix 2500 lightly managed, 5700, or one of the 5400 series Stratix switches. So that feature we're taking advantage of, it's like I said, DHCP persistence. That's a slide. All right, so the next thing that happened is at the bottom of this slide is the firmware supervisor, or inside Logix, as you'll see, is enabling automatic firmware update. So that flashed the drive and any peripherals attached to the drive. So as I said earlier, ADC, the third thing that happened, the automatic device configuration, it is only available in our PowerFlex 520 and 750 series drive. So that's the 523, the 525, and then the 753, 755, and 755T. Not the older, more mature PowerFlex 4 and 7 class. So ADC, it's allows you to configure the Logix system to automatically download that configuration. ADC is available from Logix version 20 and above. And like I said earlier, this complements our Stratix line of switches that automatically assigns the IP address. So the advantages for using this technology is the technician or the engineer that is trying to get the system back up does not have to get a computer and manually perform these three functions during the drive replacement. It also keeps an engineer or technician to being called in on the off shifts where you may not have the staff that has the skill set to perform these functions manually. Also, this third bullet point is, it keeps someone from making a parameter change from the keypad. So if I go over here and I've got a system running and I change the acceleration time from 10 seconds to 5 seconds, and I do it at the keypad, it's done. But with ADC, the next scan, the PLC will write over that change, so it keeps somebody from changing parameters at the keypad and causing some issues. So all of this helps save time and money by reducing the downtime. So at this point, I am going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to move this camera. Let me mute this real quick. All right, I've unmuted. Rachel, can you see the demo in the screen?
I can. It looks great, Kelly.
All right, great. So what we have here, everyone, is a Compact Logix L18 ERM. I'm running version 32 of Studio 5000. I'm connected to this guy over that blue cable there. And then we've got a very large Stratix 5700 20-port switch. When I went to retrofit this demo and add a managed switch, we had a 20-port available in our demo room. So the 5700 comes as a 6-port, a 10-port, and a 20-port. That guy's bigger than the PLC and the drive. So we've got a PowerFlex 525 over here, connected over Ethernet, of course. And if you can see these buttons down here, this Compact Logix, these 3 buttons, excuse me, are connected to the Compact Logix I/O. So if I hit the green start button, we start the drive, and it's accelerating up to 30 hertz. And that's just because in Studio 5000, in the frequency command tag, I've typed in 3000 for 30 hertz. So our system is running, and at 2 a.m. in the morning, our drive goes down. So I'm going to stop the drive. And once it stops, I'm going to turn the power off. So what I'm doing is I'm simulating a drive failure. We still have power to our compact Logix and our Stratix switch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this cover here, and then I'm going to disconnect the Ethernet cable. I'm going to remove the control module. Our 520 series has a control module and a power module. So I've taken that control module and just going to let it sit there. So this is a new control module right out of the box, simulated, and I'm going to install it. All right. I'm going to remove this cover. I'm going to power this up. I'm not going to connect my Ethernet cable just yet, because what I want to simulate is we are starting the drive up, and you can see I'm going to pick up the camera. We're going to scroll there. It's at version 4.01 of firmware. The system in Logix 5000 and the new or the old drive was at 5.02. So the new drive that we pulled out of our storeroom is at a lower firmware at 4.01. And to prove that it is at defaults, the start source comes from the keypad, and the speed reference comes from the drive pot. So it's truly at defaults. So I'm going to stop this drive. We'll turn this power back off. And I'm going to connect the Ethernet cable to the Ethernet IP port. I've been known to plug it into the DSI port, which is the serial port that you use for door-mounted keypads and other devices. So it won't work if I plug it in there, guys. So I've plugged into the Ethernet IP, and I'm simulating we are starting the system up. So this guy's powering up. I'm going to pick up this camera. If you look here, I don't know if you can see that yellow blinking light is for port 2. So right now the switch is converging with the 525. And once it sets communication and is sending the IP address down, we will see it turn green. So it's now turned green. And now what is happening is you see the word flash. So the 520 series, when you're flashing the firmware, its display shows that we're flashing the firmware. So we want to be very careful here. And I want to point out, anytime you're flashing a piece of hardware, you do not want to interrupt communications or power. So if you do that, it will end up not completing that flash, and it can damage the hardware. Sometimes you can recover from it, but sometimes not. So we want to make sure we are while the controller is flashing the drive, that we do not cycle power. And I'll show you of a way in a few minutes of how we can alert the staff around the machine that this is happening. So we're flashing the firmware. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave my camera here. And Rachel, you tell me if the audio fades out, because I'm going to share my screen again.
We can hear you real good right now.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again. And in this show, so I am actually connected to the controller in Studio 5000 Logix Designer. The only reason I'm bringing this up and showing this is down here at the status, you can see here that we are firmware updating. So this is the status of the add-on profile or the module definition, the status of the drive. So we can have that status displayed on one of our panel view 5000 or panel view plus 6, one of our HMIs. We can have that displayed to show the operators, the engineers, the technicians that we are firmware updating. So that's very important, like I said, that we do not interrupt this flash process. So I've not done anything in 5000. Like I said, the only reason I brought this up is so we can see that status. And once the firmware is finished flashing, it will say configuring for sending down the parameter set. And then once it finishes and our IO is happy and we get rid of the yellow triangle and our IO light on our controller it goes to solid green, then this status will turn to running, which means that the add-on profile, the module definition is running. It's happy. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. Scroll back through to where I came to, where I stopped. So this slide here, hopefully we're back up. Rachel, are you seeing the Stratix 5700?
It might take just a moment. I think it's transitioning.
Okay.
All right, I think we're there now.
All right, so this is a screenshot of where I went into the Stratix 5700. I did this through Express Setup using a Firefox web browser. Google Chrome does not work very well. So I was instructed by my network guy to use Firefox. So I went into Express Setup and gave the switch a name and an IP address. And this is what we're looking at is our dashboard. So this would be the live view of the Stratix 5700 switch. So the next slide is where I have gone into configure and selected DHCP. Like I said, that's dynamic host configuration protocol. So that's how we send down the IP address. So I had to create a DHCP pool and give it a range of addresses. And then this next slide is selecting the DHCP persistence tab. And you can see here where on the fast Ethernet port number 2, I selected the pool because I can have multiple pools. And that's the IP address, the 192.168.2.25 that I want the Stratix or the PowerFlex 525. That's the Ethernet address that I want it to send down. So very simple configurations there. You may be hearing some clicking noises behind me as this drive is being flashed. Sometimes we have to reset the drive as this process is happening. So the second thing that happened after the IP address was sent down to the drive is the firmware supervisor setup. So all three of these things are configured and done after your machine is up and running. There's no more parameter changes that's being made. You're making good parts, that kind of thing. So one main point is you have to be in program mode, and you go to controller properties and you select non-volatile memory. Once you get non-volatile memory, this load and store is available. So we'll select it, and then we get into the load and store menu. So we're going to load the image. We've got three selections here. I'm going to explain a little bit about them. So I'm choosing user initiated. You've got the option for on power up. But what I found when I was setting this up with a customer and a Rockwell field service engineer is when I select on power up, we can update the firmware, but what it also does is it loads the controller program. Every time we power cycle the machine or the controller, it loads the ladder program or the controller program from the SD card. And you may not actually want that to happen, because if you've made changes on and off shift to the ladder program and forget to save it to the SD card to load it there, then the next time the machine is power cycled, the controller's power cycled, it'll reload that program. So I found that most customers, most systems, the user initiated is the best option. So then once we do user initiated, we're going to come down here to the bottom, and we're going to select enable and store files to image. Okay. Once we select that, we'll select the store button, and a screen's going to come up. I didn't capture it as a screenshot and put it in the slide deck, but what it's going to do is it's going to list the devices that are not going to be stored. So if I have forgotten to load the firmware on the laptop that I'm using, and I'm connected to controller before all of this, if I've not downloaded that and installed it from our product compatibility download center, then it's going to tell me that. It will say firmware not installed on computer, or if I've not set the keying, the electronic keying to exact match, it will tell me that. It will say electronic keying not to exact match. So once that's stored, and that can take several minutes. So this next screen is actually the last piece of the three independent features that happen is the ADC. So the slide you're seeing now is the module definition or the add-on profile. And you can see here that it says ADC is enabled. How to do that is we've gone into device definition, and we had to set the electronic keying to what the firmware actually was when I built the project, and then we set it to exact match. And then you'll select automatic device configuration. And with this being a 525, port 0 is the drive. if this was a 523 and we had a dual port Ethernet card, you would see that down there. Or if this was a 750 series, you know, the main control board is in port 0, but then you have ports 4 through 6 or 4 through 8, depending on which drive, that can accept I/O cards, feedback cards, and safety cards, and any number of Encompass Partners cards. So you would want to select those cards because they have parameters associated with them, especially the I/O and the feedback. What you may not want to do, you'll also, if you've got a door-mounted HIM keypad, you're going to see that in one of those ports also. But if you're not changing the keypad and you've not changed any parameters in the keypad, like custom display, then you would not check that box to back that peripheral device up. So, all right, so some of the helpful notes and user manuals. These are 2 knowledge-based documents, and I believe Rachel is putting in the chat a link to knowledge base. So you could download these 2 tech notes, or if you wanted to, you could do a screenshot right now on your computer and grab this slide, or come back and view this virtual lunch and learn this today later on. Yeah. So the next publications are from the literature library. So the instructions for setting ADC and firmware supervisor, those type of things, are in the user manuals for each device, for whatever device you're using in your system. And then there's an application guide that kind of ties this all together. So what I want to do now is I'm going to stop sharing again and go back to the drive, because I've heard the clicking noises and I believe we are ready to test this out. The biggest thing is we've got the I/O light is solid green, which means everything in the I/O configuration tree that's tied to this system and not inhibited is happy. So now if I start the drive up by pushing our green button here that's tied to the compact Logix, we're going to go back to the 30 hertz that you can see there. That's our commanded frequency command. So yeah, yay, it worked. No issues. And that's always a good thing.
Kelly, I'm afraid we're having trouble hearing you.
All right, let me bring my camera back.
That's much better.
Okay. So our demo's back there running. I'm gonna go ahead and stop it. And, get that fan. And I'm gonna share. We'll go back to sharing my screen. Make sure. All right. Wow.
While you're getting back to where you were in your presentation earlier, Kelly, I just want to mention I did put those links both to the literature library and the knowledge base in the comment section on this video.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I had a little technical difficulties with PowerPoint. So hopefully you see the tech notes in the user manual slide there. And that kind of wraps up what we wanted to accomplish today. Hopefully we were able to help answer some questions and educate everyone about some of the advantages of using not only our controller and our drive over Ethernet IP, but using a managed switch to help with drive replacement. And Rachel, if you've got any questions in the chat that you would like for me to address today, I can do that.
Sure. We did have one question in the chat. It comes from Tony. He asks, can Firmware Supervisor automatically downgrade? And is the Firmware Supervisor within the Stratix switch or control Logix? Bruce did respond to him and told him that it is in the SD card on the Logix processor that has the AOP version stored on it. And he also confirmed that you can downgrade, and he gave some examples there. If there's anything you'd like to add to that answer, feel free.
That sounds great. That sounds great. And I can follow up with Tony. I know him, so no worries.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We also had another question from David asking for a list of drives that work with ADC. I'm not sure if there is a list maybe out there on the web that we can point him to. I've asked him to reach out to us directly at that email address as well, and we can get him some additional info.
Yeah, and I can comment on it. It's the PowerFlex 520 series, whether that's a 523 using the dual port Ethernet card or the 525 that has embedded Ethernet. The 527 is a drive that works as a motion object in Logix. So it kind of has it natively built in. And then our 753 that you can use our dual port Ethernet card for it. And then the 755 and 755T have an embedded Ethernet. So those are the drives. The older PowerFlex 4 class and 70, 700 do not support the ADC. So
that's great. And I'm sorry, Bruce, I actually see farther down the list here, you did actually respond and confirm just what Kelly just told us too. We have a follow-up question from Tony asking, is there a limit on how many VFDs that can be on a single controller?
So they're not in respect to ADC and Firmware Supervisor. There is, and it just depends on the system, how which controller you're using, that kind of thing. We definitely recommend a managed switch once you get above 5 or 6 drives on a network, or if that network is being tied to a business network or to a higher level network, because with an unmanaged switch, you have issues where you're having multicast traffic, and the drive doesn't like that. It doesn't want to hear what the HMI is doing. It just wants to really talk back and forth to the controller. So having a managed switch helps with that.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to thank you, Kelly, for this wonderful presentation and demonstration for us. And thank you to Bruce out there in the comment section being our resource out there. And thank you to all of our viewers joining us today, the day before Thanksgiving. We love having you here. As we mentioned at the start, you are always welcome to reach out to us at that Mac and Mac Live email address. Let us know if you have any questions, and just let us know the name of the presentation you attended so that we can get your questions to the presenter and they'll reach out to you directly. And with that, thank you again, everyone, for joining. Remember to subscribe to the McNaughton-McKay YouTube channel for more industry content like this. And we look forward to seeing you live again soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.